Very good afternoon. I wish that you guys have so far. My presentation is going to be a little bit different than other people. I'm going to approach flow a little bit more academically. But before we get into the term flow, I really wonder a question is how this term is actually defined. This term was firstly defined by a psychologist that other people have mentioned as well. His name is Mr. Mihaly. He's an American psychologist. He's also known as the father of happiness, that all of his life he's spending time on understanding people's optimal performance and happiness. The term is initially conceptualized in 1975 when he studied optimal performance. He actually interviewed a lot of people, and people generally describe that when they're in the zone, they generally perform better than usual. What does that actually mean to us? For a rock climber, they might say that their hands just move naturally and they just know the next movement. A dancer like Judy, waiting right next to the stage, she might say that once she gets to listen to the music, she doesn't need to really think about her movement. She can just flow naturally. A writer like Dr. Papa at the back, he might say that it's not that his brain is actually working, it's that his fingers is just typing. But it's really hard for me though. That's probably the reason why I fell asleep in his class very often. But anyway, how does flow occur? Or what was actually happening when we experience flow? This is more of a broader definition of flow, that matter of fact, our brain can get a sense of immediate feedback that we know exactly what we need to do next. A more scientific definition would be that it is an intrinsically rewarding state, that the process felt effortless, and the way that we perceive time is different than we perceive time right now, where we feel time is passing really, really fast. And why would we even experience flow? I mean, I can't experience flow while I was writing. I really had a hard time. And sometimes, if I was about to write something, I'm really struggling to see if my sentence makes sense. I can't be a good writer as other people, probably not as good as Sophie. And that prompted me to think of the question. So I looked up Mr. Mihaly's model. He had two models. This is the newer version. He thought that flow is actually related to two things. The first thing is how skillful you are. So you can see that there's a skill level at the bottom. The second thing is how challenged the task could be, so that you can see right in the vertical axis. He thought that if you don't have a high skill level, and if the task is not challenging, it would not lead to flow. Say if you're right here, if you have low skill level, if you have if the task is low challenge level, then you can't experience flow. Like, I'm not a dancer, right? If I'm going to learn dancing right now, I probably can't even maintain my balance. I'll probably just fall. So that's what he means. An older version of the flow model, what you would see is on the right side. So he thought that it's linked to user capability and task difficulty. But what's the difference between this model and this model? His older version of this model actually emphasized more on the user interaction with the environment, while this model actually emphasized more of internal appraisal, meaning that he thought that the flow in the newer version is something that how you respond to the task, while this one right over here is how you interact with the environment. And that actually prompted me to think, Isn't that very similar to Yerkes-Dodson law? Because he also mentioned optimal performance. He thought that when we only have a certain amount of arousal, we can perform better than we actually were. Is there a connection? So I looked through some scientific research, and indeed there is. In the Journal of Psychology, they state that if you have certain amount of motor arousal, then you're more likely to experience flow. But a deeper question would be, why is that? And now it's time for us to get some insights from neuroscience. So a certain amount of moderate amount of arousal is actually linked to something we call the LCNE neural circuit, also known as the LCNE level right here or over here. If you have a certain amount of arousal, you can see the graph on my left side. This is the brain tuning activity, the graph of brain tuning activity. You can see that there's a peak, and there's the pattern here is actually predictable. But if you see that if you have certain amount of low arousal, then you almost see no peaks right over here. And of course, if you are being too distractible, if you have too much arousal, the LCNE system gets too much, meaning that you are too anxious, just like I were 10 minutes ago. Then I can't even think of anything. My brain is jammed with any thoughts that I can't focus on the content that I'm speaking right now. So that's interesting. Let's delve deeper. A deeper graph for us to understand this would be our brain graph. Now, both of these two graphs, the neural circuits right over here, are introducing a broader picture of LCNE system. LCNE system, its full name is locus coeruleus norepinephrine system. So if you see its anatomy, locus coeruleus is located right over here, the rostral end of the pons. And then it's over our spinal cord, however, under our brain. And if you look at the graph right over here, you can see that it travels through the whole brain. From the point where it initiates, from the locus coeruleus, it travels through hypothalamus, travels through thalamus, travels through the whole neocortex, even interacts with the amygdala, the midbrain, and interacts with everything. Some insights about that would be the LCNE system affects everything in our brain. So that does make sense, right? Because remember when we say that when we were into the flow, we pay no distraction and time feels effortless. And everything is connected with our brain, and certainly the LCNE system can enable us to do so. Even a deeper picture would be, how did flow occur? Meaning, how did LCNE system actually initiate? Locus coeruleus actually is a modulator for stress. So that got back to the point where, when we were thinking about arousal, because stress is certainly related to the amount of arousal that we have. And that's another picture about the LCNE the circuit. So the green dots right over there, NE, norepinephrine, and ACTH, CHF. These are just, some are hormones, some are neurotransmitters that are all linked to stress. So now we really understand how does flow occur. And the way it occurs is it actually how we respond to stress. Also, another picture or another perspective that we can focus on is, as I said, because locus coeruleus is located right over here, right, a little bit over our spinal cord, rostral end of the pons. We understand that our conscious decisions actually correlated to the whole brain. But anything that underneath the brain, like pons, pons modulates our sleep, heartbeat, it's not something that we can consciously manipulate. So that's why Joe said, right? Joe said, to be sure, I'm not sure how we can get to flow, to be definite. But certainly we can have some takeaways from the neural circuits, from some psychological approaches, as well as neurological approaches, are that flow is something occur naturally. And this is actually something that I want to emphasize on. I'm a senior student, and a lot of peers around me, they're really struggling to think about their majors. And I'm thinking that I have passion towards psychology, I have passions towards neuroscience, and this is exactly the reason that why I'm doing it. And I think it's better for me to get into the flow, like for me to get into neuroscience other than dancing, because I have the certain amount of skill level, and I have been always challenged myself through the whole process. So, flow, again, it's something that we can't consciously manipulate it. But certainly, if you are engaging in a task that you genuinely enjoy, and you are definitely a skillful worker of performing this specific task, you're more likely to experience flow. I wish that's helpful, and that would be the end of my presentation. Thank you.